Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel if you're returning to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about plexiglass. So plexiglass has been around ever since I can remember. We've used it for anything for a quick repair on a broken window until it was fixed properly. We've used it for making windscreens on motorcycles. And I'll show you how you could bend plexiglass in order to do this. Now some people call it acrylic sheets. I just call it plexiglass because that's basically what it is. We've used it around here a lot for just either quick repairs or if we were trying to like frame a picture. The uses for plexiglass is almost unlimited for what you could do with it and the applications that it could be used for. Personally, myself, I started using plexiglass when I got into the car audio, and some people wanted to have something a little bit more flashy for an install. So I started using plexiglass as like an amp rack with side lit or backlit, so the amplifiers could be enhanced or kind of stick out a little bit through the lighting that was surrounded around it. Plexiglass is also a great basically for transferring light from one place to another, and I'll show in some photos how to do that as well. So before they had digital cameras or cell phones with cameras or video recording on them, I was using plexiglass for just personal stuff myself. I built a stereo rack out of wood, just the outside frame, but each shelf was like a half-inch thick plexiglass that I side lit. So the stereo rack that I made, never liked the bookshelf stereo systems. I always liked components, cassette player separate from the CD player, record player, tuner, amplifier, whatever. Each component had its own shelf, and each shelf was side lit with LEDs. Now, LEDs have been around for a very long time, and you can pick them up over at Radio Shack, but the way LEDs have evolved as far as mounting and as far as high intensity LEDs worked out really nice in some of the future stuff that I ended up working on and building. Now, I wish I had photos of that. That's when I was living in Tennessee when my first wife, and I kind of left that stereo rack out there. I took all my components after I divorced her ass and left her there. But I left the stereo rack there. Anyways, I ended up getting involved with plexiglass again later on when I ended up getting my PT Cruiser. And some of the car audio stuff that I ended up doing before that, taught me a lot on how to use plexiglass, how to cut plexiglass, how to drill through plexiglass, the different thicknesses in plexiglass, and the type of blades that you can use with a jigsaw to cut it. Now, in a series of photos that I'm going to be showing you now are going to be some of the things that I've done with plexiglass as far as cutting goes and shaping and giving it, kind of a accent lighting and how I accent lighted the edges of them. Now, these are some pretty old pictures as far as, the install went, as far as the car audio and stuff. But, it's kind of self-explanatory. So here I started off with a kind of like a design that I was thinking about doing for an install for the back of the PT Cruiser with the car audio to kind of hide the amplifiers. Underneath this panel are the amps, and I wanted to decorate it a little bit more. So I used a type of a it's a board that's got a bunch of holes on it that they use for hanging tools up on there. And that was perfect for the amps to breathe underneath the panel and work out to where, they're not going to overheat. So here are some flames. I made the PT emblem, and as I was thinking, I was like, man, this kind of looks really plain and blends in a lot. If I turn it to a different direction, the light kind of blends everything in. So I decided to start using some plexiglass that we had laying around over here to cut out and shape and everything else. So I cut out flames to match the flame and the PT emblem, and then I ended up backlighting them with LEDs, just to get an idea of how it's going to work. Now, when doing this, the kind of cool thing about plexiglass and LEDs, if you have the edges of the plexiglass kind of scuffed to where they are like a fogged sanded surface, not something that's scratched up with 80 grit, but scratching up the edges with, say, like 600 grit sandpaper, it fogs the edges of it. And the area where the light is going into the plexiglass, you want to leave that clear. The light will bounce off the edges of the plexiglass, creating like a glowing effect. And that's what I kind of did with the green and the red. Now, putting everything together, this is what it turned out like. So everything was enhanced around the PT, kind of made it look like, some people said it was like, well, you're trying to make a fireplace. And, well, kind of looked like it. So here I ended up doing a little bit more with plexiglass for a project that I was working on for my daughter. And basically what it is just a piece of plexiglass. I have a etcher, electric etcher that I think it's got like a carbide tip to it, and that thing, you can etch your initials on your tools, you can etch wood, you can etch metal, plastic, whatever. And I ended up doing like a butterfly thing for her, and went to, again, Radio Shack, and picked up some, or I actually ordered them from Radio Shack because there is no Radio Shack anymore. High intensity LEDs, mounted them across the bottom, hooked up a resistor and a 9-volt battery, and it lit up. The light bounces off of the whatever is carved or scratched into the plexiglass and highlights the whatever's in the plexiglass. So here I did some more car audio work. I was working on the equalizers that I installed into the PT. I wanted to make a bezel to go around it and kind of hide the sides and the edges of it. And I ended up highlighting it with a blue and a white LEDs on this, high intensity LEDs on the side. And it just, worked out really nice. When I brought the vehicle over to the car shows, it really got a lot of attention. And the body of the car had a flaming type of a, it looked like brushed aluminum, but it was just basically a vinyl decal that I ended up putting on the PT, which was a little bit overboard on the flamings. But then I got into, making clear panels to cover up areas that, I didn't want anything to fall into, especially the electrical areas, but I wanted to highlight it with some backlighting and still be able to have an effect to see through it. And then I started, doing the stuff with the guitars, making the panels over here with the covers for the back covers for all the controls and stuff. And that seemed to work out really good. And I'm going to show you a little bit of how to do this. All right, so we're back over here at the bench, and it's not cluttered with a guitar or guitar parts right now. I figured that, since I'm waiting for parts for the Kramer to show up, basically the string retainers, I can make the back cover plates for it. So this is one of the back cover plates that I ended up making, if you could just kind of see that. This is the back cover for the spring area for the Floyd Rose. Pretty simple to make because all the sides are straight. I end up rounding off the corners and basically mimicking this piece here, this cover plate here. So that was pretty easy. I had something to go by to make or use as a template. And straight edges are pretty easy to break or cut for doing plexiglass. Now this one here, I don't know if you can see this. This is the cover for the truss rod that I made for this thing here too. And that'll be going on the guitar as soon as I get the string retainer to put that back together. So I figured I'd get those pieces done and wait for the mail, shipping, whatever. Now, I've got a couple different pieces of plexiglass here. This one here is kind of not very good for doing too much with. It's pretty thin. You can cut it with scissors. This doesn't crack or split on you like thicker plexiglass would. And then cutting with scissors is a hell of a lot easier than trying to cut it with a razor blade or with a jigsaw. And then all plexiglass has a protective top and back, or back and top, whichever you want, layer of a thin plastic to keep it from getting scratched during shipping, moving, or storing it. Now this is limited to what I can use it for. I mean, doing picture frames and stuff, if I want to put some type of a see-through clear glass or something on it and not have a lot of weight, this would be perfect for doing that. Cut it down to size and you're good to go. The stuff that I've been using is this stuff here, which is a 18 by 24 inch piece of plexiglass, and it doesn't say what the thickness is, but it is the same thickness as basically your cover plates on your control cavity, or like the back plate for a Floyd Rose. This is what I've been using, and you can kind of see that, I got a nice straight line over here, and I got a cut over here. Now, for some of this is basically cracking it to cut it. Using a jigsaw on something that's this thick, well, depending on the blade and how fast you try to plow through cutting plexiglass, it actually welds itself back together from the heat that the blade is creating from cutting this. I've used all different types of blades for cutting plexiglass, and I have not found one that actually works really, really good for cutting plexiglass and not having it weld itself back together in some point or some area. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. So I learned how to do a different way of cutting plexiglass and then shaping it to what I want afterwards. And it doesn't involve any type of power tools to do this. So I have a piece of plexiglass right here, basically the same shit that I've been using for making the control cavities out of. And it's pretty simple to cut this stuff, and you can kind of see I have a nice long area here. This was a corner, and I'm going to show you what I've done and how I've done this. So here I got the plexiglass, and here I got a straight edge, and here I got an X-Acto knife. All right, and you want to make sure your blade is sharp, because it makes it a hell of a lot easier to snap this, and you get a nice clean snap after you're done. So say I want to just cut something out of plexiglass. So I'm going to hold this down very tight. If I need to transfer a template over to this, I would use like a black magic marker and cut on top of the line, not off to one side or the other, because you can always remove the extras with sandpaper or a file. So say I'm going to take, and I want to make a nice straight line. So I'm going to take my Sharpie here and make a line. And what I want to do is I want to cut in the center of that line. It's better to have a little extra than not enough. And then you take and you start putting some pressure down and just scarring it. Trying not to move things around on yourself. Again, having a nice sharp blade. And after that, now I've been using this thing here as basically this is my fret leveling bar. So I've been using this as kind of my breaker to break off the piece of plexiglass. So I laid a piece of plexiglass across it, my cut edge right on the line. I put something on top of it that is not wood, because wood is flexible, metal is better. Get it lined up right with that edge. Put pressure on it. Now I need to be on the edge of the countertop, so I'm going to go ahead and move over here and then just snap it. You see I got a nice clean nice clean straight line, other than the plastic here. So I'm just going to pull that plastic off. And you can see there's a nice clean straight line. Now there's a little bit of a burr right here, so that could be taken off with sandpaper. Not a big deal. But again, as you can see, where that burr is, all right, is right here on this corner. And as you can see, I have plenty of meat from the black. If you can see the black that I put on there from the Sharpie marker, that little chip that was right there, well, I got enough here that I could sit there and sand that straight as a board. Get a piece of sandpaper. I mean, I could use that. Could use this. Get a piece of sandpaper out, start sanding it to whatever you want as far as having a nice straight edge. Now, bending plexiglass is a little bit of a different story. And you have to peel off the protective layers. Make sure that the protective layers are off, because the protective layers will melt and become one with the plexiglass. Now, you can also polish plexiglass. So say I want to bend this. So I'm going to lay this. I'm going to lay this right here. All right. And I'm going to give that some type of a shape. Not applying heat directly to the plexiglass, but to the plexiglass itself, to where you're able to heat it up. Now, this is what we used to do with windscreens for motorcycles. We had a larger piece that was cut to size and shaped, and then we would lay it on top of something that had a little bit of a bend to it, or we would have to heat it and bend it and heat it and bend it, heat it and bend it in order to get the shape that we wanted to go over, say, like a fairing of a motorcycle, you know. So this is what we used to do, but we used to do it at a torch. This is basically the same thing. So I'm going to heat this up, and basically what I want to do is kind of heat this up, lightly going over it. Again, I'm not applying direct flame to the plexiglass. And you gotta be careful, because you could distort the sides of the plexiglass if you're not careful with doing this. Now it's starting to give. And let it cool. Now you have an undistorted bend that you can still see through in the plexiglass. Now, if I was making like a display case or something, I would get a bigger sheet of plexiglass, use the magic marker, Sharpie, to mark off the areas that I want to bend, and have one piece that is a rectangle or a square, and then make a top for it. And all the sides, they're not glued or seamed together. They would all be like this, exception of the top. So shaping plexiglass, okay, so how do I do that? And this is strong too. This is not going to break. Shaping plexiglass, how do I do that? All right, well, the good old-fashioned way. Say I need to make a control cavity. We'll use this. We'll use this as an example. Use this as my template. Transfer it over the top side, not the bottom side. The bottom side has a bevel over the edge. You don't want to use that, because it'll throw you off when you make your mark around it. Use the bottom side and get a nice edge around there. Transfer that over to plexiglass. Cut it same way as I showed you before, with putting the ruler on top of that edge and then cutting it with a razor blade on the plexiglass. Now this wouldn't be there, of course. Your transfer would be on the plexiglass. And snap it. Then go to another side, straight edge, snap it. Another side, straight edge, snap it. And to get these round corners, well, you would go and make a straight edge like this. Instead of having one big, say this was the corner, having one big corner like this, you would sit there and scar it, make a mark with the pen, scar it, and then snap it. Now you're left with two little pieces that you could shape with a file or piece of sandpaper. That's what I've been doing to get the control cavities the way I want them to fit properly in the indented area, the countersunk area. Now, say if you don't have a template, what do? Best thing to do is to, where are you? Get a small crayon. So you would take, now I'm going to do this the reverse way of how I did the Kramer guitar. Take a piece of paper. Say this is your control cavity. Take the piece of paper, put it on top of the control cavity, hold it in place to where it's not going to move. Take the crayon, there's your template. So you could put this on top of any flat surface. Take your piece of plexiglass, put it on top of that. Now this is going to be, you know, obviously the wrong size. Take your magic marker and just trace. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just trace it. And then cut using what I showed you with putting the ruler on there and the razor blade. Do it right on top of the line so it gives you enough play to be able to shape it and shave it down to the way you want it. So this is how I did the Kramer. And the Kramer, that came out really good. And you can almost not even tell that there's a cover on it unless the light reflects off of it. Like I said, you can also polish, sand and polish plexiglass, just like if it was a finish on a guitar or on a vehicle or something. You can sit there and use the rubbing compounds. They actually make plexiglass or plastic polish. Do not use, and I'm going to keep saying this, do not use paper towels on plexiglass either. Say, you know, window cleaner and plexiglass, you know, okay, I'm going to clean it like I clean my house windows or the windows on my car. No, that shit will scratch up plexiglass very, very quick, very, very fast. And it's almost like taking 1500 grit sandpaper or higher, and by the time you get done, say a year of cleaning the windows, say every other week or whenever you wash your motorcycle or whatever, it's going to start look like it's all scratched up and foggy. It's not going to look like plexiglass anymore. So that's how I've been doing things. Hope this helps out. And again, you know, using the sandpaper, and it's very easy to take this and make a rounded edge. So it used to be as sharp as this. Now this is rounded. It may not look like it's rounded because of the plastic, or if you can even see it, I don't even know. But it's got a nice rounded edge instead of a sharp edge. And don't be afraid of it. I mean, it's going to be a lot of work to get to the shape that you want to get. And the nice thing about the marker is it really doesn't come off of the plastic. Now, if you want to get rid of the marker, or if there's still some marker on it, this is why you leave the protective layer on top of it. You use this as your writing on, not the actual glass itself. And if you do get a little bit of marker on your plexiglass, rubbing alcohol will remove it. But yeah, you could sand this, you could polish it. They actually have plexiglass or plastic polish to polish plexiglass, and it works pretty good. Not as good as the automotive stuff that you would use for paint, but it does kind of work. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you guys learned a little something, and take it easy.